I'm AJ Bianco from Podcast PD, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Katherine Davis-Gibbon. Katherine is an award-winning children's book author and publisher. Our focus today is her latest book, Words. Join us as we talk about growing a child's vocabulary and learning the power of words. So much to learn and think about. Thanks for listening. Oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How can you do that, you ask? I'm glad you asked that question. 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, you could click on the link on my website homepage where it says, Buy Me a Coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Katherine Davis-Gibbon is an award-winning children's book author, publisher, certified yoga and Pilates teacher, and mother of 2. She founded Riverlet Press in 2021 to publish books that nurture children's inner lives. Her debut book, My Old Friend, then received critical acclaim and multiple literary awards, and her new book, Words, has been lauded by multiple editorial outlets and received a Gold Book Award from Literary Titan and a distinguished favorite recognition from the Independent Press Awards. Before her writing career, Davis-Gibbon was a contemporary dancer and choreographer, performing nationwide and teaching Pilates and yoga to a wide range of clients, including Olympians and celebrities. She holds a BA in dance from Scripps College and numerous certifications in Pilates and yoga. Katherine, it's so great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us, and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time.
Well, glad to have you here. Enjoy the book. I enjoyed the book, and I want to back us up and talk about your bio for just a minute. I read in your bio that you started Riverlet Press in 2021 as a platform for books that illuminate and enrich the child's inner life. Could you talk about this?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a mom. I have 2 children. They are now 9 and 14, and we still read together in a sort of a different way. But obviously when they were younger and they were this age group that these books are targeted towards, kind of 3 through 8, we spent a huge amount of time reading together. And, for me as a mom, there was a certain kind of book that I was wanting to find that I was finding difficult to find. It's not that it doesn't exist, but it's more of a rarity. And that's the kind of book that really inspires children to think for themselves, to inquire, reflect, consider things. I feel that, a lot of children's literature puts the cart before the horse, in a sense of the book kind of delivers a message with a sledgehammer, or kind of tells children the quote unquote right answer before they've really properly posed the question. Or, these days there's a lot of books that are a little bit gimmicky, and it's fun. I mean, I enjoy those books too. There's a place for those books. I'm not dissing those books, but I was hoping to find books that dug a little bit deeper, but did so in a way that was appropriate for small children. And so when I started writing my own work for children, that's really what I was doing. And I realized, I have enough ideas and I have enough material here that I could really form my own imprint that, where every book that I create is aimed towards that specific intention.
That is awesome. Well, this is a kudos on these books and your focus. I think that's really neat. And my kids are, in their late 20s or early 30s, and way beyond all of this, but getting ready to have their own. And but I remember those days of reading with them, and making sure that you chose the right book, type of thing. And it's cool that you're looking for these books that have that sort of that ability to enrich their life, to use your words. So I like that. That's cool.
Nice.
Your recent book is fun. It's a meaningful book, and it's called Words. Why'd you write this book?
Well, there's sort of two levels to why I wrote it. There's sort of the personal level, and then more of like the kind of cultural, societal level. So on a personal level, I'm a writer. I have an affinity for words. I always have. And for me, they're kind of, I kind of think of them as like my circle of BFFs who know me even better than I know myself. So, words can comfort me if I'm having a difficult day. But also words can confront me and kind of push me to be better and to grow, to inquire into things, to self-reflect. They're friends of mine, but they're also my teachers. And I really wanted to share that message with kids. And I think specifically, right now, it's rough out there. It's brutal out there as far as communication goes, not just for children, for adults. We're living through a difficult time in this country. It's a very combative kind of atmosphere. It's very normal these days to weaponize words. Everyone's sort of broadcasting their opinions on social media. And I think that kind of gets under people's skin, and it really kind of influences how they talk to others, even in person now. There's just more kind of tension and friction and combativeness in the air. And I think, that's tough for kids to be growing up in that environment and kind of entering into the fold of language and literacy with that as the backdrop. So, I really wanted to kind of catch kids right at that age, 3 to 8, 4 to 7, whatever you want to call it, where they are coming into relationship with language, with literacy. This is sort of their formative experience with words, formative time for them with words and language. And I wanted to catch them right in that moment and kind of really give them the message that words can be their friends. Words can be their teammates who kind of rally behind them. Words can be their confidants who they can share with. And words can be their teachers too. And that this is like a lifelong relationship that they're entering into that will constantly evolve and change as they grow. But just to present language in a more nurturing, warm kind of light and encourage kids to like take it on and partner with words in this journey. So don't be daunted. Yes, there's all this stuff going on. There's bullying. People get canceled. People are hyper critical of one another and hyper vigilant of what other people are saying. But the more you kind of forge your own sacred relationship with words, the more they're going to be there for you.
That's awesome. I love it. And it is interesting because one of the things in the world today is I love it when someone tells me what I meant.
Right.
With my use of words, and it's like, nice. Okay, let me try that one again. Because you heard something different than what I meant. That's anyway. It's interesting. Interesting.
Well,
world.
it's a two-way street. Communication is expressing and it's also receiving. So it's about how you listen too. And that's also a theme in the book is, it's about the lost art of listening, and attuning to others, empathizing, actively listening.
Love it. I love it. All right. So who's your book for? I mean, adults who will read to their children or children who are early readers or a different group?
So certainly I would say initially it's for adults who are reading to their children. If it becomes a favorite book, which I, hope it will, then, the kids are going to go back and pick through it, by themselves, maybe share it with a friend, because it's set up in a way where it's sort of like a game, picking out the words from the illustrations. So it's sort of hopefully rivals like an iPad for the attention. It has that game-like interactive quality to it. But certainly at the start, the intention is that a caregiver or a teacher or librarian would be reading this book with children. And both of my books, this one and My Friend Then, are really meant to kind of serve a dual purpose. With the child, it's planting a seed of an idea that is going to grow as they reread the book and just grow with them, kind of lodge in their memory and grow with them. It's also meant to be a reminder to the adults of things that they know, but things that are easy to lose track of or forget in kind of the hustle and bustle of your life and the demands of being a caregiver. So, hope is that it can really be like a shared experience between an adult and a child that also kind of provokes discussion, and it feels like a game, feels like a special time spent together, and then something that can kind of live inside the two of them as they continue on this parallel path of parenting and growing.
I love it. I love it. It's good stuff. And it is a beautiful book, as well as the wonderful story that you're doing with the words. And so I want to go there for a minute. I love the use of the images with words. I mean, could you talk about a little bit about the illustrations?
Absolutely. So the idea, once I had kind of written the story, it was really important to me. Like the purpose of this book is to bring words to life for children. So I just decided in my head, I was like, okay, so I need to illustrate words within the book as characters. Like they need to be fully illustrated. They need to be idiosyncratic. I want kids to see a word on the page and first of all, kind of feel like, oh, I think that might be a word, but what word is it? And kind of get drawn into the phonetic decoding, like, oh, can I figure it out? I know that's a word. I know it's a word, but what word is it? Just to kind of tease them into the relationship in that way. But I also wanted them to really get this hit of personality off of each word and how each word has its own personality, just like people do. So, they have each word has strengths, superpowers. Each word has vulnerabilities, quirks, oddities. I wanted kids to see words and immediately think of someone they know, maybe, or hopefully think of themselves, self-reflect, be like, oh, I know exactly that feeling. I know exactly that feeling of push, or I know exactly that feeling of pull, or whatever word it was. So I sort of went into the process like, okay, so I words. And, easier said than done. So I'd never really seen this done in a book before. You see things like letters with little faces on them, but I wanted to take it way further than that and really innovate. So, I searched and searched through illustrator portfolios, and I saw Anne Berry's work, and I just loved the way she rendered her characters. They sort of have this kind of two levels, like on the surface, very charming, very appealing, but also you feel that tenderness, like you kind of feel the humanity, the foibles of her characters. And I thought, okay, I think this woman can do it. So I just reached out of her, just totally out of the blue. I just said, love your work. I have this idea. And I explained it to her, and it really hit home for her. She was like, wow, that really, when I was a kid, I really struggled to find my voice. And I love this idea. I love the idea of it being a challenge, what a challenge it would be to try and do this. And I said, well, you have to be able to work closely with me because I'm super bossy and I know exactly what I want this to look like. And, and I want you to bring your ideas and your talent, but this is a collaboration. And she was like, I love it. And so we were just like, okay, let's do this. We were so excited. And then just right away, it sort of hit both of us at the same time. Like, wow, how do we do this? Like, wow, we haven't seen this before. So we just started sketching. Like I sketched, she sketched. I found that illustrators respond really well to visual communication, go figure. So I do my best to describe in prose, like a vignette that I'm imagining and what I want it to look like. But a lot of times I would do a little doodle, which was horrible, really poorly done doodle. And, email it to her. And then she would say, oh yeah, I think I see it, and she would send me something that looked a lot better. And I would say, okay, but it has to have more quirks to really feel like a person. So then I would go through and I would draw on her drawing and, give it certain, like make its clothes a certain way. And then she would send it back to her and she would make it super colorful. And we had so much fun coming, and it took forever. It took like a year and a half because every single character had to be different. Wow. So and I'm a real stickler for the details. So it took forever, but we really, really enjoyed working together. And I would 100% work with her again. And same, she says, I think more like an illustrator than any author she's worked with. I see it in my mind, so it makes it easier for her to kind of know what I want. So yeah, we just had a lot of fun. And I think it's been effective. I think it's fun, but it also gives you that hit of like the personality of each word, which in a way, one of my favorite things about it is taking kind of a bad word and making it sort of endearing, by just bringing out all the different layers of that character. And then hopefully, that then feeds into kind of fostering empathy in the child and, having that ability to relate to someone who's having a bad day or someone who's feeling defensive or whatever. So it was very fun. And I love the way it turned out.
That is so cool, because knowing that, first of all, you knew someone that you liked, the way she illustrated things, and just reach out, which that's awesome in itself. And then to be able to have that opportunity to collaborate together, to make it become, because they're fun. You get the personality of the words, and they're part of the story. They're part of the story. They're not just a printed word on the page or something. That's
exactly, they're characters. They're word characters.
Yeah, it's so cool. Well, that's awesome. I'm glad I asked you that question about how that happened, because that's neat stuff. All right, so let's talk a little bit about parents reading with their children. What impact can this have? What do you think? What are your thoughts about that?
I think it's wonderful. I really do. Something that I think it's universal, or nearly universal, that children love being read to, particularly, even kids that maybe, their genetic makeup, the way they're wired, maybe they're not wired as well for reading. Like maybe that becomes a challenge for them down the road. Those kids love being read to. They still love stories. And what happens in the brain is the same thing. If you're reading a book and the kid is following along, it's processed the same way in the brain as if they read it themselves. So it's very healthy. It's setting a really good foundation. And I just love the sharing, the conversations that can come, and the ideas, the creative ideas, the play schema ideas. I mean, it's such fertile ground for strengthening the relationship between caregiver and child, whoever that caregiver might be, if it's a grandparent, a teacher, a librarian, a special, relative, uncle, very involved uncle, or whomever that might be. It's nurturing. It's nurturing. It's good for the soul, and it sets them up, to have a good relationship with words. And it's so important, because the thing is, we can never escape words. They're going to be there in our mind. And they could be our own, and they could be authentic, or they could be the ones we've internalized from things that other people have said to us. But I want kids to realize they can choose. They can learn to differentiate, and they can choose the authentic words. They can kind of hunt for and attune themselves to hearing the authentic words that are really theirs, their feelings, their thoughts, their opinions. And then they can work and play with fine tuning, like, well, how do I express this really big idea I have, or there's something difficult I have to share with this person. How do I express this? And I just really want kids to be engaged in all the subtleties and nuances of that process. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes a little frustrating, but I think more often than not, I think it's a delightful process, and I wanted kids to find the joy in it. So hopefully, just the more that parents read with their kids and just take care with language in the home, the more they can tap into that naturally.
That's so awesome. It's one of my favorite memories is reading to my own children, but also my memories of being read to as well.
Yep. Me too.
And a cool interaction that is. Just so powerful. One of the things I want to pull out of this is this idea of expanding vocabulary. Could you share your thoughts about how reading can help children expand their vocabulary and why they want to do this?
Absolutely. I mean, I think reading is one of the ways they will expand their vocabulary. It starts with, I think, just kids liking books, enjoying that quiet contemplative time of kind of being in conversation with an author and an illustrator in their minds. Isn't that cool? We can do that with someone we've never met. And then as they grow, if they have an interest in books, or they have good positive associations with books, they hopefully they read on their own, and they keep reading, and the material gets more sophisticated and their vocabulary gets more sophisticated. And why would you want to do this? There are so many reasons that I couldn't really pick one, but I can kind of give an overarching descriptive of just the more words you know and really feel confident in your knowledge of, the more tools you have, the more options you have in any situation that you encounter at any time in your life, whether it's a problem that you need to solve, a bully that you need to set a boundary with, a crush that you want to let know you think she's cute, or anything, a huge, amazing idea that you want to explore. If you have more words, you can unpack whatever it is and get closer and closer, kind of fine tune in on it specifically. So it's just such an incredibly powerful tool to have. And I think in terms of the inner life, certainly for me as a writer, as I think I described earlier, I think of words as my BFFs. And it's like, in that sense, I'm never actually alone. Like, I can find support, and I can push myself. Sometimes it's the tough love support, and sometimes it's the sweeter, more kind of consoling support. I really try to carry words as like partners, and to see, this is like a lifelong journey that I'm on. So, by no means am I done, or is anyone done ever. It just keeps unfolding and keeps unfolding. And what an incredible miracle that is. And so I think it's just wondrous and just magical. And, it's like I want every person, and specifically every child, to kind of see it that way, so they can enjoy it, delight in it, and make use of it, the best that they can.
That's so awesome. I think about throughout my stages and development, and where it's really come in handy, the more you know, and it goes way beyond tests and things like this. It comes in handy when you're talking with different people about different things. And it's funny. I was a very young second lieutenant in the Army, and I'm at a social where it's all these young officers with all these very senior ranking officers and their wives or husbands, and you wanted to make sure that they didn't see you as a kid. And so you're trying to make sure that you're using good words, good language, and, and such. And it's just funny because I've had different stages in my life over the time, where everything from, I was a high school principal one time, I'm meeting with parents and families and such. And you want to make sure that you're, the words you're using, that it fits and it works. And you don't have people going, huh? Or oh my gosh.
You want to present yourself accurately and well, and represent your intentions well. And, I think you made such a great point. I think a lot of times young children kind of feel like words are the realm of adults, older siblings, bigger kids at the park, whatever. They know, that they don't have the same mastery level as someone who's older than them has. But I just don't want kids to take that and latch onto that as an identity, in a sense, and sort of get stuck in it and be afraid to experiment and try. One of the messages in the book is that words love second chances, third chances, as many chances as it takes. And they do. Words are fantastic at rephrasing themselves, apologizing, explaining, giving context. So, but you have to be in it, You can't be like, oh, words, that's for those people. That's for those people who are, more senior than me, or, older than me or whatever. You really have to partner with words. And so that's fun and engaging, but also really kind of give kids that hit of ownership and agency and accountability about their use of language.
That's awesome. You've kind of touched on this a little bit, but I want to go a little bit deeper, which is, tell me what you think about this statement. As a child's vocabulary expands, the child has to develop an awareness of the words they choose and the power they hold.
Absolutely. I mean, it's true. It's true. The more words the more words might pop out of your mouth at any given time. The more words you hear. And it's like, where are you hearing those words from? Are you hearing them in a song on the radio and you think it's kind of cool to use a bad word? Or, are you, is it something that you just heard someone say? I remember my brother, when I was a kid, used a really, really awful word. I'm not going to say what it was, but he used a really awful word. I mean, a word that's describing a really awful thing. And I didn't know what it meant. And I asked him, and he was too embarrassed to tell me, so he gave me the wrong answer. He gave me a more kind of benevolent, innocuous answer. And then I thought that that's what that word meant. And I went and used it very casually a few times until my mother heard me and said, "Do you know what that means?" And I was like, "Yeah, it means, he told me it means." She was like, no. So yeah, the more, you never know. You're going to get exposed to words sooner or later, one way or another, from this person or that person in your lifetime. But the more, agency you have in understanding, not superficially, but deeply, like having your own personal experience and connection with words, the more apt you're going to be to use them in a way that is what you intended, first of all, and more kinder, more effective, more accurate. And when you communicate with others, when you hit the nail on the head, they're like, yeah, and there you go. You're working together. You're not in conflict, you're working together. So it's great just to unpack words. I think it's just one of the great joys of my life is just to continuously unpack language and kind of revel in it.
That's so cool. And by the way, hopefully you got your brother back at some point.
I think I ever did because he was older, but yeah, that was not good.
No, it's like, thanks a lot. Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's so cool thinking about how, as we learn, as we figure out what's real, what they do mean or do not mean, or as we're, figuring things out and working in situations where some types of vocabulary are better than others to use at different times. And just it's just so powerful. I mean, and one of the things you mentioned is that we have this strange world today where, it's very problematic that many of the words are polarizing and there's just this critical exchange of words happening. I mean, let's go in a little deeper with that. What do you think about that? I mean, how can we help our children learn about, maybe not how to get caught up in this or whatever? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge problem, right? Bullying is like an epidemic now, and it's happening at all levels of adults are doing it, and children are doing it, and children are learning to do it from adults, and it's kind of infecting like a virus, kind of just getting under people's skin. I think making even well-intentioned people just be a little more vigilant, a little more prickly, a little more defensive. And when you kind of carry that stance in your body, that's when you get reactive, and then you say something reactive, and that makes the other person say something reactive, and here we go, we're on this spiral, right? That's kind of the current that our society is on. And so kids growing up in this are getting swept into that current. It takes a lot of discipline, I think, and intention to decide to swim upstream and not engage in that. And actually, I think it's really important because it is so difficult to do that, to have a plan. So it's, babies aren't born mean, that we don't start out that way in our lives. So some people have their paths, and some kids gravitate towards bullying, and some kids gravitate towards becoming a victim, and some kids gravitate towards just trying to stay safe and not get engaged in any of that stuff. But this whole phenomenon is something that kids have had modeled for them, and they're picking up on. So, in my opinion, at least, I say they want to do better. They want to be happy. They want to feel safe. They want to succeed. They want to feel proud of their successes. Give them a map that shows them how to do that, So teachers, parents, and frankly, people who aren't teachers or parents, other adults, you are also influencing the younger generation just with your actions and your words and how you carry yourself and conduct yourself. So, what do we want for our society, and what do we want for our children? If we want and are willing to do the work of kind of swimming upstream here, you kind of have to set a really mindful intention of like, I want my communications to not be defensive. I want my communications to be kind and effective. And I think things go together beautifully, dovetail together beautifully. And then that's what kids are going to see and pick up on. So, another struggle that they've had to face, as we all did, but it was just such a formative thing for them, was the pandemic, certainly. My youngest daughter, she just turned 9. She was 3 when everything shut down. And I remember just the agony of just thinking to myself, like, will she even remember? Like, are these going to be her earliest memories of like masking and measuring? Are you 6 feet apart? Will she remember we were always at the library? We were at music together. We were always at play dates. She went to preschool. She just started preschool. She had a life. She did dance, she did gymnastics, she had a life. But will she remember that because she was so tiny? Or will her earliest memories be this weird Zooming, asking, distancing kind of situation? This really affected kids deeply, profoundly. Their social skills suffered, their social emotional development suffered. It's on so many levels, the pandemic, held them back. And what's fascinating to me is now we're out of the pandemic, and things, particularly these last 3 years, have really settled back into more normal kind of situations, less missing school, less things closing for 2 weeks, all that. Well, no more things closing for 2 weeks. But that was a reality for a long time. And yet, reading test scores have continued to go down. Pediatricians and therapists are still deeply concerned about kids' mental health and their social emotional development. I think it's a pretty tough time to be growing up. And it makes sense to me that kids need extra support. And like I said, they just need a map. They need a map of like, hey, this is what healthy interaction looks like. This is what caring about language looks like. This is how you show care for others. This is how you greet others and interact with others. You could go into it so much deeper, even with technology, all the things they have today that didn't even exist when I was a kid, like self-checkout. There's just it's so easy to kind of miss people in the culture today. And then you've got this young generation, that went through the pandemic at such a formative time of life. It's tough. It's tough for them. And so I think, parents, caregivers, and like I said, every adult out there, please really think about how you engage and, the choices that you make, and set a good example.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I think about just the impact that not being able to play with their friends had on them. And then, just those interactions that were taken away.
Yep.
And that in and of itself was so destructive. And then on top of that, what you may or may not be learning or feeling about the thoughts and all the stuff that, and then part of the world is you're seeing whoever's talking to you through a mask,
Yeah.
And
Yep.
oh my gosh, just those different impacts that are going to be there for a long time into adulthood, and you hope that they're able to get some assistance in addressing that, because it's just all of that. I guess I'm avoiding using this word, but I'm not going to. The trauma that the types of trauma that it created in a young person's learning. And
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, the evidence is there, about, fascinating, reading test scores were sort of on this decline from 2020 to 2022. The National Assessment Governing Board puts out their report every 2 years or whatever. And, no surprise there, right? It was the pandemic, and parents were going to work from home and kids were, it was no surprise there. But to see from 2023 to 2024, the reading test scores not plateau, not start to climb back up, but continue declining at the same rate that they declined from 2020 to 2022. That's really a wake-up call. That's a red flag, that kids are needing more support, I guess, than they're getting. And I think it begins, with just cultivating a positive relationship with language.
That's so impactful, and it lends itself to this, which is something I wanted to I heard you kind of get there with a few things that you're saying, but is, this whole, the idea that with greater vocabulary can also come this possibly better understanding or developing of empathy towards somebody else. I mean, can we talk just a little bit about how it has that positive effect too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could, everyone talks about, the social development and the reading test scores, and those are legitimate concerns. But the reason I started Riverlet Press, as I was describing before, is really to kind address and nurture the child's inner life. And I think when you can find yourself in the world of language, that automatically right there is attunement right there. So if you can learn to attune to yourself, which is much easier said than done. We've all got the voices we've internalized in our minds, the critical parent, or, the person who didn't like us, or, we hang on to stuff like that, right? And we hear those voices in our minds. You need like a healthy, loving, onward leading, productive voice in there too, to kind of talk sense into hypercritical voices, and to kind of know yourself. And when you know yourself and you're at peace with yourself and you have that authentic confidence, not some kind of puffed up, inflated, fake put on confidence, but an authentic confidence, it is much easier to listen, to receive other people's feelings, even when they disagree with you, and to, be the big enough person to say to them, so what I hear you saying is this, and then you get right. And you say, and I respect your opinion. I actually have a different opinion, but I respect your, there are ways to do this, and, sometimes it might be, it might not roll out like that. It might be that you have that authentic confidence. You are able to attune to yourself, and someone says something to you that you never would have thought of in a million years. But you're able to hear it. You're not threatened by it. You're able to hear it. You're able to be touched by it. And it teaches you something. And you say, I'm really glad you said that to me, because I am seeing this in a different light now, but all of that stems back to just having the ability to kind of use and receive words.
That's so awesome. It's neat because the more they learn, the more they can learn about the world around them. The greater their vocabulary, there's all these good ways of using it for good, I guess is
exactly. There's nothing bad there. One of the themes that I also explore in the book is how there aren't really good words and bad words. It's all about how we choose to use them. Because, bad words, I mean, nobody enjoys them. Nobody takes pleasure in them, really, unless you're really upset, I guess. But, they exist for a reason. They exist because something bad happened and that was real. And someone experienced that and they needed to frame it in their minds or tell somebody else that it happened or, write it in a history book so that future generations know that really happened to people. So, unfortunately, as a product of us being human, these difficult words exist in the language, but, you don't just write them off. It's like, oh, that, I don't like that word. That word doesn't exist to me. That's not real to me. Well, then you don't really understand it. You haven't really let it in. You don't have a deep appreciation for it. I think you have to, unfortunately, let yourself be touched by some of these difficult words and difficult stories in order to understand them and empathize. That's part of empathy, is being able to feel it. So one of the messages that kind of runs underneath the story in the book is really about, there are no bad words. It's what we choose to do with them.
So important. And, it does remind you, one of the things that it makes me think about, by the way, is, when my kids were young, one of the worst things, you're kind of like, oh, I hope I didn't say something I shouldn't have said around them, and my favorite memory is when I got told I was used the S word, and I was like, the S, oh my gosh, what did I say? And then, it turned out to be stupid was the word, but
okay.
I was like, phew, at least it was that word. But at the same time, I was probably watching sports and chose not to use one word and used that one. And
in another one.
Right. And that one had its own issues of its own. But, it's amazing what, as we learn to, as a child growing up, you learn, expand your vocabulary and the good that can come out of it, which is awesome. So I love that. All right, Katherine, we're getting close to finishing up. And one of the things I wanted to run this scenario by you. If you were given a chance to talk to a conference of young parents, what is something that you would say about words, vocabulary, and or reading that you would want them talking about when they left your talk?
Okay, that's tough because there's, obviously more than one thing. I think one of the things would be what I just said, that instead of kind of blaming the word for being a bad word or a good word or leveling these judgments on words, to really have this ongoing, like, animate, living conversation with your kids all the time, not just when you're reading, all the time, about why that word, how close was that word to your intention? How accurate was it? And, was it effective? My feeling is that kind communication is effective communication if you really unpack what kindness is. Not kind of stereotyping kindness is weak or accommodating or whatever, but if you really kind of unpack what kindness is, a form of care, that when you take care with words, your communication will be more effective. And when your communication is more effective, that tends to be kinder to whoever you're communicating with. So, I think one of the biggest things is just, this is a journey. This is a lifelong journey that we are on together. The adult doesn't have it all figured out. They're not good because of, what age they are or what degree they have or whatever. They're not done. And, your children can be, as you beautifully illustrated in your example, a mirror for you, to show you a word that you use that maybe they felt uncomfortable with or, had some questions about or whatever. And so, let it be a back and forth. Let it be a dialogue. Let it never be done. Let it never, you'll have those arguments where you say, this conversation is finished. You walk away from your kid or whatever, but it's never really done, and that's a good thing. So I guess if I had to choose one thing that I'd want them to walk away with, it would be this idea of like, this is a journey. Neither of us is ever going to be done. I am further along on this journey than you are to your child, but we're doing this together. We are co-creating something here with our dialogues and our communication, and let's make it something where we're both learning and, not just vocabulary, but learning skills and empathy and ways to show care.
Love it, love it, love it. That's an awesome message. Katherine, we're this close to finishing up. Where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
Thank you so much for asking. So I would encourage everyone to go to my website. Everything is there. So it's riverletpress.com, Riverlet, L-E-T, press.com. And I have all these different tabs on there. There's a where to buy page where you can search for, I list indie stores that carry the book, as well as like the Target, Walmart, Amazon, etc. There's a resources tab with classroom activities for children who are in K through 1, and a separate one for children who are in grades 2 and 3. So if you're a teacher or librarian, you work with kids, you want to read them the book and do some games or crafts kind of centered around these themes, I have suggestions there. All my social media links, please follow me. And you can just read. You can read about the books. You can read about my background, read all the reviews, have lots of beautiful reviews. I've won awards for both my books. I should be talking more about my first book, My Old Friend Then. You can read about My Old Friend Then as well. And yeah, everything's in one place at riverletpress.com. And the contact button. So I love just hearing from individuals. If you're a teacher, if you're a librarian, a bookseller, if you're a parent, a caregiver, and I do a program where I go visit schools usually. I read the book and we talk about words a little bit, language, and then we play games, literacy-based games that are really fun. And I love sharing with readers in this way. So regardless of where you live, if you're inspired by this conversation, hit the contact button, send me an email, and I'll see if I can get to you somehow. Because I love visiting schools, libraries, wherever.
That is awesome. Love it, love it, love it. And I'll have that information in the show notes, so it's easy for them to find that contact button.
Thank you.
And reach out to you. One last question for you, Katherine, and it goes like this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it, and what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
Oh, gosh. I kind of consider almost everybody in the world to be my teacher, but obviously there were those who taught me explicitly. And 2 people come to mind right away. There was Dr. Dolezal when I was in high school. He was my advisor, and he was the kindest, most supportive, believed in me when I didn't believe in myself kind of teacher. I mean, the man was mensch. He had my back. He's no longer with us. God bless, love him. And then in college, my advisor in college, Professor Coates, he had my back more of a tough love kind of way. And apparently I needed that. And he really made me rise to my potential. And so, I got the soft side of it from Dr. D, and I got the tough love side from Professor Coates. And I couldn't appreciate both even more than I do.
That is awesome. I love it. So cool. And thanks for sharing that. That's neat, the dichotomy there between the two, that the impact that they had.
I guess we need both, right?
Yes, exactly. I love that. That's cool. Katherine, thank you so much for talking with us about your book, Words. What a wonderful book. Powerful, great imagery, excellent use of words. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me all this time.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.